Seen a lot. Amid the celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to Emma Maree, who's been brought to us through a couple of friends of mine, and that she's worked with and has connections with. And Emma Maree is a mindfulness coach, and we just had so many tech difficulties to get this podcast started. She really proved that she practices what she preaches. So I think we're going to call this the Perseverance podcast. So welcome to the show, Emma. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Dwayne. I mean, what you probably don't know is that when I work with clients, and you'll hear more about my framework today, but we talk about having this A game and we talk about having this B game. And this B game is where we have our attention in really unhelpful places, and it causes this stress response and it distracts us from what we're trying to do. And when we get intimately sort of connected to our B game and we know what triggers it, then we can stay ahead of it. And the thing that triggers my B game more than anything is technology, And so whilst an hour of tech issues were just happening there, I'm like, this guy's about to see my full-blown B game, and he hasn't even met me. And I'm supposed to be a mindfulness coach, so yeah.
Well, if by B game you mean like chucking a phone against the wall, I've done that. So yeah. I definitely have a B game when it comes to technology.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to like a kind of a brief intro to Emma. Is she works with a lot of professional athletes. You were just over at the Olympics in Paris for the Summer Olympics, working with some teams over there and some individuals. You do speaking, consulting, corporate executives, corporate teams. You do stuff for students, online, virtually, in person. I mean, the whole gamut. And so I'm really super grateful to kind of get into this conversation. I mean, mindfulness to me is just a sweet spot for me because I think it's a cornerstone of our development and our awareness. And so I'm super keen about listening to what you have to say today. And I think. I don't want to. I typically don't do long intros, but if I've missed anything, please chime in on that.
No, I mean, a quick way of saying it is I help people in high pressure, high expectation environments consistently bring their best, really. So, mindfulness is at the cornerstone of that, because fundamentally when we're present in the moment, not attached to the outcome or attached to the fear or the what ifs or the if onlys, then we tend to perform better. So that's where I see it.
And I hope I just captured the statement that you had just said, but it is continually bringing your best. I think were the exact words that you used. And so I'd love to just start there, because I think sometimes people, even myself, I'm going to use myself for an example, I think, I would prefer to think that I continually bring my best, but I don't. And sometimes there's a lack of awareness in my understanding of what is my best, when do I bring it, how often do I bring it, how consistently do I bring it. And so just that statement of continually bringing your best, I'd love to just kind of hone in on that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word I used was consistently, because no, that's okay. And the reason why I sort of pick up that word deliberately is because in performance, we can have an incredible performance that is better than anyone and is just, our talent meets us in flow, and we, are just the best in the world. But that is not what turns us into an elite performer. That does not give us the results that we're after. What gives us the results we're after is being able to bring our best consistently. And when you say, I'm not sure if I continually bring my best, it's important to understand that our best looks different depending on the circumstances, depending on how much sleep we've had, what's going on around us, the opposition, the weather, the all of that stuff will shift what our best looks like. But what I'm trying to say to an athlete particularly is that your best ability to execute this process is going to be affected by a whole lot of things. But when you're able to start to step into each moment and hold your attention and focus on executing that process to the best of your ability, your consistency will win out in the end. And a really great example of this is I work in motorsports. So I work in Formula One and I work in IndyCar. And the IndyCar driver I work with is an Australian, well, technically from New Zealand, but we claim him in Australia. And he was a supercar, he was a supercar driver, which supercars is, I don't even know how to describe that. It's like road races effectively. And when I met Scott, his talent is still just sublime, and his competitiveness and everything like no athlete I've ever met. And he was in 2017 in the Supercar Championship. The way it works is you, like most motorsport, you accrue points over the races, and the person with the most points at the end win the championships. And he was winning the championship by so many points that in his final race he had to come 12th to win the whole thing, and he hadn't been off the podium all year. And he got into this race, and they sing the national anthem before the race, and he's listening to the national anthem. He looks over, he sees a carp, and he just wants to run away. He wants to just get out of there, and he doesn't want to get in the car. And he's so consumed by the expectation of winning the championship. Like we think you are sitting in such a golden position that you can't lose, but that expectation and the fear of, well, what if I do stuff this up when it's a given that I win this, is so huge that as a human, our survival wiring kicks in and we just want to get out of there. So he's going through this experience. I wasn't working with him at the time, but how he described it was just, I just wanted to run. I didn't want to get in that car. He gets in the car and he makes every possible mistake that you could make. He gets penalties, he hits other people, he does things in the pits, his team in the pits are no good, and he comes 13th and he loses the unlosable championship. And after that, then he met me, and he went on to win back-to-back supercar championships. He had the most poles in qualifying in history. So effectively, he turned into this incredibly consistent performer. And this is a really long story to describe. There was a moment where in the commentary, they have a guy who goes down to the garages and he sort of entertains people talking in the garages. And he'd created this graph where he plotted where the drivers of the Supercar Championship were based on halfway through the season, and if they continue to perform like that, where they would end up at the end of the year. And Scott had a nemesis competitor, Shane Van Gisbergen, who was a phenomenal athlete. But as this graph was getting plotted, you would see Shane one week would just be so far above everyone else, and then the next week was, crashed his car into a wall. And Scott's graph was just a dead straight line. And this is what we're trying to get in sport, this consistency that I know when I step out on the field or in business, when I step into a meeting, when I step into my day, when I step into a conversation, when I step into any competitive environment or any environment, any performance moment where an outcome is on the line, that I can consistently bring my best. That does not mean someone won't be better than me. It doesn't mean that I will win. It doesn't mean that my team will do what I want or the client will say yes. It means that I'm consistently bringing my best. And when we're able to do that, the results will take care of themselves.
There's a lot to unpack in that. I guess maybe the first thing that I kind of heard was expectation early in when you were talking. And I'm curious, as you were telling the story about Scott, who had, placed 13th in that final race. and the expectation, how, in your experience, does that manifest when a normal person, and I don't want to say normal, but with a everyday person who, whether it's in their business, whether it's in their family life, like when you kind of were talking about some of those, I was like, well, how do I consistently show up for my kids? How do I consistently show up for my wife? How do I consistently show up for my friends? Like, and that whole, I don't love to use the word balance, but the balancing of all the things that have to happen in life. Um, and, in those high performance, environments at work, when we have to win the client or create, develop the culture, or continue the culture in an organization, or lead the teams, and, manage your executive teams, or whatever it is, your sales teams. Um, how do how does this manifest? How can people start to see where they have not been necessarily aware that expectation is playing a bigger role in the background? That's kind of what popped into my head when you were talking about it, and I'm happy to take it anywhere, but that was kind of the first initial thought in my head.
I call it the demon of expectation because expectation will actually eat your mind. And what I mean by that, well, let's first look at what expectation is, because expectation is a completely external construct, has nothing to do with the external environment. So when I am stepping onto the field, and I'm going to use Australian examples, sorry, but I work in the AFL, which is the equivalent of your NFL, I guess. When I step onto the field for an AFL grand final, the environment, the ball, the rules of the game, the grass, the sticks that I'm kicking the ball through, the number of people on the field, the external environment has not shifted at all. The external environment isn't changed. The external environment is not getting a bit more tense because it's a grand final. The external environment, the grass is not getting more stressed. The ball's not getting more tense. The expectation, what changes is our internal world. And what expectation is when we change the filter through which we're looking at something because we really want something or we really don't want something. So when I am stepping into an every game, a season game of football, then I want to win. I don't want to lose. But the internal environment is like, well, if I win, that's great. But if I don't win, well, I'm still the same position on the ladder. And, it's so my internal environment is creating a story that is not really clicking over this fight and flight response. So the perception I have of the environment is that I'd like to win, but if I don't win, it's okay because we've still got many more games in the season. Once we step into an external environment and our perception is that this is make or break, that if I win, I get this thing that I've always wanted, or if I don't win, I get this thing I really don't want, failure, lack of respect, shame, disappointment in my family, then my internal environment starts to create this narrative and this story. And there's a purpose behind that. Our internal environment is creating this story so that our perception of how bad and how much under threat we are drives us to run faster towards we want, or drives us to run faster away from what we don't want. So it's serving a purpose, but it is what it's doing for most of us humans is tipping us over where we're in this striving, running from the fear. And now I have actually no attention on the process. I have no focus on what information the environment is really giving me. Oh, the ball is there, the player's there. Okay, what are my feet doing? And allowing ourselves just to be in the moment. So muscle memory and everything we've trained can kick in and we can execute the process to our best of our ability. When we are running towards this thing we really want, running away from this other thing that we don't want, and that is what we call expectation, then we are not executing our process to the best of our ability. We're escaping, hiding, or fighting.
How I was kind of, you know, formulating that in my brain, which is small. So please, like, correct me if I'm wrong here. But so we're moving, toward things that we want, away from things that we don't want. In the process of us focusing our attention on that, we are failing. And the word that popped into my head, or that I was thinking of, was we fail to be present in the moment of where maybe I'll use the word flow can happen. If I perceive that right, or am I, where would I be corrected in that statement? Because
let's just take one step back, because this will help everyone listening to this podcast, and it will help everyone in their life, is to understand that as a human, we are wired purely for survival. Now, we know that, but we don't really look through that lens when we're going through our daily life. So we are not wired to be great at our jobs. We're not wired to be a great parent, a great father, a great partner, a great businessman. We are just wired to stay alive. And because of that, there are only two things that cause us a stress response in our life. One is that predator, and one is that prey. So think about that prey as something I really want. So when I am striving for something really want, the stress is being caused by the perception that I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to win that race. I'm not going to get this deal. I'm not going to, meet my target, meet my deadline. And so we are striving and running so hard towards that, because that is, in our today world, that is the prey for a caveman. That is the thing that they're trying to hunt. That is the thing that they're trying to get. Also, we are running away from that predator, that thing that is chasing us. Now, for the caveman, that was a saber-toothed tiger, or that was, the whatever was chasing them. But for us, that is that failure. It's other people's opinions. It's being disconnected from the tribe. It's being looked like we're not good enough. Now, when we are trying to run towards this thing we want, run away from the thing we don't want, when we are in this fight and flight response, certain things that are happening to us, our frontal lobe of brain shuts down. We go into our mind and we create stories and narratives around why this threat must be super bad. We get shallow breath. We get blood that leaves our digestive system to our arms and legs. We get tight shoulders. We get tight lower back. We feel a bit sick. I mean, what do we call that in today's world? Call that stress.
Anxiety, really.
Anxiety,
like stress,
right?
Anxiety.
And so we're sitting there constantly. I'm so stressed. I'm so anxious. I'm so tired. It's like, no, you're just running. And so when we have this magical word called flow, that athletes are like chasing flow, and when you ask an athlete, and you will have either, I know you've look after yourself, but I don't know if you've had a competitive athletic experience. Yeah. How would you describe flow? Tell me some of the things when you were in flow. What was that like for you?
I mean, I would use words like instinct, like there was just an instinct there. It was, it just felt like invincible, on demand. I could call on it. It was there.
What were you thinking when you're in flow?
I don't even know if I could say I was thinking anything necessarily specific, other than I would say the feeling I had was confidence.
Right. So in the moment, when I'm in a moment and all I'm doing is responding to the environment in that moment, I'm not trying to win the game. I'm not trying to beat my opposition. I'm not trying to be the best in land that deal. I'm just in that moment, fully present, no running towards something, running away from something. I'm responding to the environment. Okay, they said that, so I say this. The ball's there, so I move my feet like that. And muscle memory and prior experience is driving my behavior, but I'm not, there is no thought. I'm not thinking I should, I have to, what if I don't, I better, I must. There's no hoping, wishing, praying. It's just like, there's a ball, So I just move and I do whatever the environment is asking me to do. That is when we're purely present, and we call it flow, and it feels magical. And then we spend the rest of our career chasing that. But
Right.
flow is in the not chasing. Flow is in just the being in this moment. Now, if I stood on a football field with no attachment to the outcome or what I hope to get, how I respond in that moment is not going to be very good, because I haven't done any of the training. I'm not very fit. I haven't, I don't have the talent. So we all can't just step into the middle of a field and, flow is what produces those results. Flow produces a result in line with our training and our talent. But flow state, whether it's business, whether it's with our kids, whether it's with our family, is that we are just meeting the moment and taking the information from the environment, which is coming through our senses. What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? And responding. Now, I know that you get that, and I know that your listeners get that, and I know that I'm not the only person that's saying that. This is very common knowledge. It's the how that becomes really difficult.
Which was actually going to be my next question, which was like, so if we break down flow, I mean, as you were saying this, it's one of the sayings that kept repeating in my brain, which then I believe the Navy SEALs coined, which is people think that they will rise to the occasion, but they fall to the level of their preparedness or something of that level. And it is, in order to be able to get into that flow state, what are the components then that have to happen in order for us to get there? And I would just, not that I want to, and this might be for a later one, but I want to mention it just because I don't want to forget it. But around the anxiety piece, like we had, the word anxiety came up, and so many people kind of use that word, and some people legit have anxiety, and it needs some support from a doctor and drugs and whatever. I'm not a doctor, but I also do believe that we oftentimes are ill prepared to deal with or we have not prepared ourselves to deal with some of the things that are obviously going to pop up in our lives, and death in family, financial woes, children who don't listen to you, you know, poor business results, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Health, declining health, whether it's in yourself or your loved ones. So, yeah, I don't know if we can work all that in.
Yeah. Let's try, because I hear what you're saying about the anxiety thing, and I think it's really important. So let's just put that to the side a little bit and
Perfect.
start with the fact that as humans, it's the more we understand how, at a very basic level, how we work, then the better we are at sort of managing it. So effectively, we have these thoughts. I mean, we have 50 to 90,000 thoughts a day, which is a lot. We're not hearing all of those thoughts. The scary thing is 90% of what you think today, you thought yesterday. You're just repeating the same stuff over and over again. We're just sitting on it and going over it. But these thoughts work in collections. We call them a neural net. I can't just have the thought, oh, I'm so tired, and that just sit as one thought. One thought, I'm so tired, will be linked to the next thought of like, I don't know that I can do this today, which will be linked to, if I don't get a break soon, which will be linked to, we've got so many meetings, my company doesn't understand, I don't know how I can do all this, they're not giving me enough support, I need to move to the seaside and grow vegetables and tap out. Like we can't have the thought just like I'm so tired and it just sit there. It will start another thought that starts another thought. What we fire together wires together. They become linked. And this collection of thoughts that we might label that collection the thought I'm so tired collection of thoughts, that sends, when we fire that collection off, it sends like messages in the form of peptides and hormones and chemicals all down through our vagus nerve into our body. And I'm sure there's a lot smarter people listening to me, and doctors and psychiatrists. Remember, my job is to talk to 20-year-old, mostly male athletes. Like, I'm talking their language, and what it does is these thoughts and the electrical impulses it sends to our body responds, and our body feels different. Now, some people, that thought of I'm so tired, I have so much to do, might feel very heavy and might feel very slow. In someone else, it might feel very racy and very out of control. But not only does it change how we feel, it changes our entire physiology. So this thought, I'm so tired, I have so much to do, now my posture might be getting really small. I might be hunched over. My eyes might be going down. My voice might go flat. My face has no expression to it. So now I'm going into a meeting saying, I'm so tired. I don't have time for this meeting. We've got so many meetings. This is ridiculous. I don't have the support I want. And as I'm running that internal dialogue, I'm getting smaller. I'm getting quieter. I've got these feelings. Maybe it's a bit racy or maybe it's heavy. I sit in this meeting and these thoughts and these feelings together now drive my actions. And so now I'm in this meeting and I'm looking down and my posture's small, I'm quiet, I'm not sharing any of my ideas, I don't have any opinions, I'm not really listening. I come out of that meeting and those actions now drive my next thoughts. Oh my God, that was terrible. What are people going to think of me? I'm such a fraud, they're going to think I'm no good at my job. Now I get really anxious, I get very racy, and I sit down at my desk and I've got all these feelings of guilt and shame and imposter syndrome. And so I pick up my phone and I start scrolling on social media because I'm just like, don't know what to do with it all. And then I've been scrolling on social media, and then I get to lunchtime. I think, oh my God, I've wasted the whole morning. I'm so lazy. I always do that. I'm so unproductive. And then that drives this feeling. It's like this really intense feeling of like, I've done it again. I'm so bad. And then I just sit down and I power through this work. And then I come home and I'm like, oh, that day was hectic, but I work so much better under pressure and I deserve a bottle of wine because that was so hard. And I open a bottle of wine and I start looping on, how bad I am. And so this is what I call a B.A.M.E loop, where unhelpful thoughts drive unhelpful feelings that drive unhelpful actions. And these unhelpful actions drive more unhelpful thoughts and more unhelpful feelings. And we get stuck in this cycle that is just so, and notice I'm using the word unhelpful. I'm not using the word negative, because there's a big difference. Positive thinking can be really unhelpful. So these thoughts I'm running of I'm so busy, I've got so much to do, I can't get it done, is not helping me feel great in this moment, which is not helping me take best execution of my actions. So I'm not best executing the process, and then my thoughts get even more unhelpful. I've done a crap job again, and this is how I get in this spiral. And when I sit in it long enough, I'm going, I feel anxious. And then when I sit in that long enough and I don't have a break from that cycle, someone is telling me that you have anxiety. And now anxiety, as you said, is really real. And, see your doctor. But for the majority of us, we are in this loop of like these unhelpful thoughts that are driving these unhelpful feelings, that are driving actions that are taking us further down this loop. And, I have a saying like, let's, do better to feel better. Let's help people take their best action, and so that they can start changing these thoughts. But we're waiting to feel good before we take, better action. And if we can learn to really break that loop, then we can get on top of a lot of these things that we're calling anxiety. And so I can't even remember your question about flow. I've gone down to the anxiety route because I'm quite sort of passionate around how many people just hand themselves over to a label of anxiety. Well, that's my anxiety. I have anxiety. My kids have anxiety. We're all on medication but for anxiety. It's like, skills before pills. Like let's really work out what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? And how to get control of that. So when we're talking about an athlete, I know I'm doing a lot of the talking here,
No,
but
no, that's why you're here, because nobody wants to listen to me. So I'm good with this.
If I take that example and I now put it into sport, it's like aha for anyone out there who's playing sport. I wish I knew NFL better. I don't, so I'm going to use AFL as an example. So in AFL, let's think of soccer. It's a bit more universal, right? So we've got a forward, a small forward player in soccer. His strengths are that his agility and his ability to move and his running patterns, and you can imagine that sort of player. And he's standing in the forward line, perhaps the ball's down the other end of the field, and he's thinking to himself, I haven't touched ball. It's first quarter's nearly over and I haven't touched ball. And that thought doesn't sit on its own. And that thought is linked to, what are my teammates going to think? What's the coach going to think? If I don't touch a ball, then I can't get a goal. If I don't get a goal, then I might get dropped. And Billy has scored a goal already. And so if I don't get a goal, so he's in these thoughts. And that collection of thought changes his feeling and his physiology. That is science. So while he's in that thought, now his posture's changing. His shoulders getting a little bit slumped. His feet are getting a little bit flat. His voice has gone quiet. He's stopped turning his head and looking at where the opposition is and where his teammates are. And then the ball comes down the field. And as the ball comes down the field, now he has to get up on his toes. He has to stand up taller. He has to turn his head and start gathering the information around where everyone is and what's going on. And then he goes to receive the ball, and his opposition times it better and gets the ball before him. And then what he does is he goes into this thought of, oh, this is a shocker. I'm playing terribly. I still haven't got the ball. And now his feet get flatter and his voice goes more quiet and his posture gets more slumped. And then as the ball gets, and then these feelings are maybe a bit more panicked. So now he starts running out of his role and running out of his normal running patterns, trying to get the ball. And now we've gone further and further away from the process. And then he comes off and the coach gives him some feedback around, you got to get the ball. You got to move your feet more. It's like, no shit. I know that. That's the problem. Right. I'm deep in a B.A.M.E spiral about it.
Right. Gets in shit for not being in position and all the stuff that he's trying to create.
Yeah. So, on that, I worked with an AFL team. We won 3 premierships in 4 years. And the biggest change we made was bringing in this mindset piece. And what was so beautiful about it is boys started to be able to, what's so great about the A-game, B-game language is it's a really safe language. I can say to someone, fuck, I'm in my B-game. And it's a way of saying I'm struggling without necessarily going deep into the struggle and being able to actually articulate what the feelings feel like. And one of the players midway through the game came to the bench, and when they come to the bench, they grab the phone and the coach is sitting up in the box and they talk to the coach up in the box. And he grabs this phone, and before the coach says anything, he said, I am in a B-game the size of fucking Antarctica and I cannot get out. And it was just a way for the coach to go, okay, I'm not going to talk to you about the fact that you need to get the ball more. I'm actually going to calm your mind down. I'm going to actually tell you, you know how to do this. I'm going to break it down and get your focus back on something really small. So it's really good to recognize I'm not having a bad game. I just have mentally gone into these unhelpful thoughts and feelings that literally it's driving my actions here, and it's not helping me at all.
Right. If we can, for one moment, I mean, I'm extremely passionate about this anxiety thing. I don't typically try on the podcast to I try to not render a lot of opinion. I will share my thoughts. I'll share like a different perspective, whatever. But I'm going to say I do think. So I'd love to just kind of go down that rabbit hole a little bit more with you. because the way you articulated the whole process of somebody, whether it's at work, whether it's at school with kids, whether it's in sport with kids or adults, like it doesn't matter. But we have this, I guess I'll frame it as self-talk. You might, but the unhelpful thoughts, and I hope I captured this right, but unhelpful thoughts lead to unhelpful feelings, and then unhelpful feelings lead to unhelpful actions. And I do think that, if we have, an epidemic on our hands, it's anxiety.
And burnout.
Yeah, and burnout. And it is, you know, people who are labeling for themselves and for others, this anxiety piece. And if we could just spend a little bit of time kind of discussing, like, A, identifying it, and B, how to overcome it. Because, you made a comment, skills before pills, which, if you sit in a room of 1,000 people, and I've been in rooms, and, we've asked the questions like, how many people who've been on some type of anxiety or depression medicine, and 85% of the hands in the room raise their hands. And then it's like, lower your hand if it's helped. And, 1 or 2% of those 85% drop their hands. And so it's a very small piece where medication is really helping people overcome their anxiety. And I'm curious, on the skill set side, what can people do um, for themselves? And if they're seeing it in a coworker or a family member, what would be, the best course of action to help from a coaching perspective?
Yeah. I'm glad you said from a coaching perspective. I'm not a clinical psychologist, and I get nervous because, I'm not a clinical psychologist. But what I like to say is, I think last time I checked, and they're probably different now, but last time I checked from in Australia, the numbers were 1 out of 5 people have a mental health condition. And I'm like, yes, I don't deal with that 1 in 5 people. I deal with the other 4 in 5 people who are burnt out, not performing at their best, not loving what they're doing, finding every day a grind. And so I really want to make the point, because there will be people listening to this podcast that suffer anxiety. And thankfully, I don't. I have a child who does, but I don't. And I want, anxiety is very real, but try and keep in mind that I'm talking to the 4 in 5 people whose physiology is experiencing symptoms of anxiousness. And
Right.
so think of, and I think the world as a whole needs to get better at really getting connected to what is going on in my physiology. We just ignore it. We're getting signs, and our body is telling us so much every day, and we're just disconnected from it, ignoring it, and not actually listening and having awareness of what's going on for us. And if we did, that would calm a lot of this stuff down. And so I like to say to people, let me change that. I've had success with working with clients where I explain to them that think of those feelings of anxiousness like an alarm system, like a smoke alarm. And this alarm is going off in your body. And I like to actually get people, rather than just labeling, oh, I've got anxiety, where is that alarm in your body? Like, go to that alarm. What is triggering that alarm? What is that alarm trying to tell you? And that alarm serves a really important purpose. It is our survival wiring kicking in, trying to keep us safe. There's a great book called The Chimp Paradox. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't. What's it called?
It's The Chimp Paradox. It's by Dr. Stephen Peters. He was is a clinical psychiatrist. He was working in hardcore mental institutions in London. And before the London 2020 Olympics, they took Dr. Peters out of mental health and put him with the British cycling team. And the British cycling team went on to obliterate the world in those Olympics. And effectively, he was saying that the paradox of the human system is that it is wired so brilliantly to keep us alive. We can survive pandemics, floods, bushfires, predators, because we have this inbuilt system that is driving us to run really fast away from that predator, run really fast towards that prey. And this system is designed for us to be super hyper vigilant, be really jumpy, have black and white thinking, make assumptions, have distorted perceptions. We need all that to stay alive. But the paradox is when we step into a performance environment, and we are all in performance environments, we do not need to be an elite athlete to be in a performance environment. A student is in a performance environment. A parent is in a performance environment. A stay-at-home parent is in a performance environment. We are trying to get stuff done. We are trying to, achieve things. And so in that environment, this system that is so great at keeping warning us, there is a danger here, run. There is a danger here, freeze. There is a danger here, fight. That system, when we step in today's world where we've got to-do lists and emails and targets and budgets and team selection and performance reviews, that system, the paradox is it's terrible. It's breaking us. It's killing us. It is seeing threat everywhere. From the moment we open our eyes, there is threat in our to-do list. There's threat in the class that we've got, the exam we've got, the teacher, the homework we have to hand in, the meeting I have, the conversation I have to have with my wife. There's threat everywhere. So our system is constantly setting this alarm, getting us to run faster, freeze, or fight. And we feel this system and we look at the information that social media is telling us and the world is telling us, and we diagnose that as anxiety. And then we feel powerless to that anxiety. We're like, I have anxiety. No, you have a really good human system. That alarm is getting you to run here because you have a deadline to meet. You have a conversation with your boss today. You have to find a parking spot. You have to get in your car and drive in traffic. Thank you, system. You are doing an awesome job, but I need to learn how to take that alarm and dial it down. And I was listening to your podcast, and when you were talking about the questions that you ask yourself, those questions is one way to actually do I need this alarm? Is this alarm, do I need to run here? Don't I need to run here? What's really going on here? What do I need in this? And then the smoke alarm is like, oh, hang on, I'm not actually under threat. I can just turn that off now. So things like questions, acceptance, gratitude, all of these different things are really powerful in getting perspective around what's actually happening in my body. And this alarm, I don't need to run here. And two, I don't have a problem. This is exactly, my human system is doing exactly what my human system is supposed to do. Thank you for doing that so well.
The takeaway here is rather than feel helpless because you have a labeled anxiety, or blaming yourself because there's something wrong with you, those are the two things that instantly pop into my mind of how it might show up. There are others for people to, grasp some awareness around it, because I think sometimes they don't see it until it becomes so big that it is, it feels so overwhelming to change. It's like the problem is bigger than it really is, and people don't know how to handle it because they're looking at it the big picture rather than just taking the small bites. And so, rather than feeling helpless and blame yourself because there's something wrong, it's just, hey, this is actually very normal. We all go through it at some level, and it's your body telling you, you need to be aware or take care of something.
Yeah. And if you actually take 3 deep breaths now, that feeling will shift. I'm not saying it will go away, but I'm saying it will shift. And you have the power to shift how you're feeling. Now, a lot of people say, well, you can't shift your feelings. And I'm like, well, I could think a different thought that's going to shift my feel. I could ask that question, and the answer to that is going to shift how I feel. I could soften my shoulders and take a deeper breath. That's going to change how I feel. I could, open my posture and hang my arms back over the chair. That's going to change how I feel. So it's like we just put our hands up in the air and just like, oh, I'm anxious right now. It's like you're supposed to be. That keeps you alive. Like, if we didn't have any level of anxiousness, any level of that danger, danger, danger alarm system in our body, we're going to walk out in front of traffic. We're going to jump off, cliffs. Like, we need that. We've just completely given it so much power, unfortunately.
What would be a checklist? Like, you kind of started there, you had mentioned the 3 deep breaths, and you gave some examples, 2 or 3 examples of changing one's physiology, like their physical position, their breathing, their shoulders. You think about like standing like Superman or Wonder Woman, in that kind of pose. And although that sounds like so weird, and unrealistic, it is, it's powerful and it's helpful. What else? What other tips would you give, or that you have given to either athletes, business people, kids?
One of the things I think in this space that is a challenge is people get tips and they don't understand the mechanism behind the tip. And then, like, here, let's get on this meditation app. You should meditate every morning. And so they go and they do a 10-minute lotus flower opening meditation. And then at 3:00 in the afternoon, they've got this massive meeting that they're petrified of, and they go into the meeting and they have an anxiety attack and they don't say what they want to say. They're not making any connection between the lotus flower opening meditation at 6:00 in the morning and what just happened to them at 3:00 in the afternoon. So I'm very
Right.
passionate. I'm very passionate around not just that. Let's understand what is happening for us. And if we go back to that loop that I'm talking about, these unhelpful thoughts that drive unhelpful feelings, and sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes you just walk into a room, you have an unhelpful feeling, and now you attach thoughts to that feeling, like, oh, I don't want to be here and I'm going to make a mistake. So sometimes it's a feeling that drives the thoughts, sometimes the thoughts drive the feeling, but together they create these unhelpful actions that then take us further down into this loop. And so the first step to getting on top of that loop, which I also call a B.A.M.E loop, I can call it a stress cycle. I could call it an anxiety cycle. You can call it different things. And depending on who I'm talking to, I will call it different things. The burnt out executive needs to know it is a stress cycle. Burnout is because you are sitting chronically in those stress cycles with no relief. Anxiety is like that cycle is just rearing too loud, too strong. So, whatever you want to call it, you are stuck in this B.A.M.E loop. You are stuck in an unhelpful place. And the very first step to getting on top of that is to catch it. We can't change something we can't catch. And the biggest problem for most people is that they've got no awareness around it. They're going through their day completely disconnected from what they're thinking and feeling. And then just it gets so loud that now they say, I've got anxiety. Hey, this has been talking at you for 5 years. This, you've been having tight shoulders. You've been having a shallow breath. You've been having this stuff for a very long time. You just are not paying any attention to it. So we intimately want to know, how does this show up for me? I know how it shows up for me. It's very victim, poor me, too many children, not enough time, no one helping me. It shows up for me that me narrating situations that haven't yet happened. I go on a dog walk and I'm talking through this conversation. I'm going to say this and they're saying that. So I know it shows up like that. And it also shows up for me in judgment, where I judge not someone's clothes and what they wear. I judge how they go about things. I judge how they've dealt with certain circumstances. I judge their emotional awareness, their connection with people. So when those things show up in my life, it's like, warning, 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 I'm in my B game. I don't have to know why. I don't have to go and sit and do talk therapy about where that came from. I just know that I'm not in a helpful place right now and I need to catch it. And if I don't do something about it, it's going to keep going and getting more and more and more. So step one, we catch it. And that takes homework. That takes to reflect on times where you're not performing at your best. What did it look like for me? What did it feel like for me? How did that show up for me? What happened to my posture? What happened to my voice? What was I paying attention to? How did I respond in that moment? So you want an athlete to be super clear. When I'm in my B game, I start blaming the umpires. My feet go flat. I stop talking to my teammates. Like, know what it is for you. How does it show up? I micromanage my teams. I procrastinate. I become cynical. I do other people's work for them. How does it show up for you? Really take some time to reflect on that and then try and catch that. Now, at the start, and even me today, you might not be able to catch that until that night where you reflect back. Oh, I was in my B game then. Like, I see what I did. But take some time to start having awareness around it. When we do get good at catching it in the moment, then what we want to be able to do is actually call stop on it. Think of it as a loop that started to go. And actually, like, Emma, stop. Now, if I just say stop to that loop and I don't do anything after that, pretty much because of our human wiring, it's going to kick in again, it's going to start running again. So once I stop it, I have to put something into that loop that changes that loop. Now, in your podcast, you were talking about those questions. As soon as you put questions into that loop, you're now having different thoughts. You're now having different feelings that will mean you take different actions. That is changing the loop. One of the most powerful things that I feel you can put into the loop is acceptance. Now, questions is a really good way to get to that acceptance. But, I know in the personal development world, we talk a lot about gratitude and the power of gratitude. And there's a whole nother layer to my story, having gone through trauma. But when we were in a trauma situation as a family, gratitude, I'm not grateful that my son broke his neck. I'm not grateful that my son's broke his neck and is now quadriplegic. I'm not grateful that he's alive. That felt a very big stretch for me. But acceptance is being able to stop the struggle, drop the fight, take the emotional charge out of it. It's not good, not bad. It is what it is. So it's looking at the external environment and what I can't change and what I can't control. It's looking at my internal environment, accepting that it's normal to have these feelings. So when I am able to accept that, so what that looks like for someone in business, it's like, well, I can't change this deadline. It is what it is. I can't control what my boss thinks of how I've implemented this task. I can't control what my boss is going to think about me in this situation. Like, I literally can't control it. All I can control is how I execute this process. But we need to go through that process of acceptance so that that loop starts to shift and change. Because the point of that loop is to tell you the bad, to tell you the dangerous, to get you to run. This is bad. Your boss is going to hate you. You're going to fail at this. You're going to lose this game. You haven't touched the ball. That you don't look as good as that person in that dress. You're going to go to this party and no one's going to talk to you. Its purpose is to get you either to not go into that situation, to escape that situation, to run faster in that situation. It's serving a purpose here. So I actually have to look at the alarm and go, thank you, I see you, but hey, I can't actually control this and I'm okay with that. And I don't have control over that. And then the smoke alarm's like, okay, you've got the warning. I don't need to keep going off now. So acceptance, I'm like, if you want to develop any superpower in life, you as a leader, as an athlete, as someone with goals, get super good at accepting that you can't change a lot of things. You can't control outcomes. You can't change what people think of you, because the power of that will turn that alarm right down. And now that the alarm is right down, now I can actually get my attention off the alarm onto my strengths, onto what I can do in this situation. So I've caught the B game, I've seen it, I've done my homework around that, so I'm really good at catching it. I know how it shows up as a parent, I know how it shows up in my friends, I know how it shows up in my golf game. Then I throw in acceptance, and that can be in your questions. It can be a ready-made acceptance statement. It is what it is. I can't control this. That's however you do acceptance. Sometimes I take people like a flow chart, actually question yourself, can you change this? Whatever it is. The third thing, I want you to think of it like this. By accepting or questioning, I've changed the thinking part of this loop. But if I don't change the feeling part, the physiology part of this loop, then my B game stress, anxiety body is going to send a message to my mind, hey, something bad, I know there's a tiger still in the room. I gotta fight here. I've got to run here. So sometimes we get really good at accepting. We get really good at saying, hey, I can't change this, but my shoulders are tense. My breath is shallow. I'm sitting like this. Oh, well, it is what it is. I can't control it. And my body is saying to my mind, there's a danger here. So the alarm is still going. So if I don't shift the physical, then I am going to go back into that alarm state. So or at the same time that I'm accepting, or before I accept, I also have to shift the physical. And that is best through that breath work. Really think of a caveman. I'm about to be eaten by a tiger. The tiger runs away. The first thing I'm going to do is a big sigh, big breath. So once I shift the physical out of that danger alarm state, now I like to say it like this, like I've got my one focus on this bad, dangerous, and what if, and I'm not going, I've got so much to do, and this is too hard, and I haven't touched a ball. I see it, I catch it, I get off it onto just acceptance. I shift my physical. This is traditional mindfulness. This is I'm just present, I'm here, I'm just letting it all be. This is not bringing your A game. Like this is like I'm present here, and I'm just in an acceptance of the situation, and I've got stuff going on. But once I've turned that alarm off, then I also want to be able to get over into my A game, bringing my strengths, nailing my process, executing it. So I sort of do it in a couple of steps. Have we lost your listeners, do you reckon? Yeah.
No, this is amazing. and so I've got a couple of questions and just a couple of recaps for myself, truthfully, and the listener. But the one just quick question on that is like shifting the physical. So shifting the physical is part of, introducing the A game, like bringing in that.
It's more, yeah. So there's two parts of shifting your physical. One, I got to shift my physical in a way that turns off the alarm. So if I'm going into a meeting and I'm like, oh God, what if I'm no good? I've got to make this presentation. What will people think of me? And I catch it. Stop, Emma, stop. I can't control what people think in me in this meeting. I've done the work. I know the material. I can't control what they think. Then I have to shift that alarm. So I take some deep breaths. I'm literally turning that alarm off. I'm moving my diaphragm. I'm opening my posture. So now I'm shifting my physical in a way that turns off my alarm. Now I've got to switch into showtime. Now I want to get over into my A game. So now I'm going to, if I'm using that example of the meeting, I'm going to stand up tall. I'm going to look them in the eye. I'm going to smile. I'm going to engage them. I'm going to get into that A game physiology of what does best execution in this moment, what does it look like physically? What am I actually doing? So if I'm that athlete and I catch myself, I haven't touched a ball, I'm going to get dropped, Billy's kicked 2 goals, now my feet are flat, I've gone small, and I catch that and I go, hang on, stop. I can't control up to this point. It is what it is. I haven't touched a ball, but there's plenty of game left. I then take a big deep breath to calm that alarm that's saying, hey, this is bad, you're not playing well. And I calm my alarm and I open my posture and I stand up taller. But now I want to get into the physiology of my A game. So now I turn my feet on. Now I get a body on my opposition. Now I, get lower my stance, get my weight through my feet, get onto my toes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. 100%. I mean,
but
I
if,
think
but if
that
I try to go to, sorry, Dwayne, if I try to go from like, I haven't touched a ball, this is bad, just like, okay, I'm going to move my feet. I'm trying to move my feet, but my attention's like, oh no, this is bad. Get out of here. So I've got to actually go through the process of turning that off so that now I can meet the moment. And I guess my challenge with traditional mindfulness in the performance space, mindfulness was designed to attain enlightenment. It wasn't designed to attain a grand final win or a Formula One race car win or nailing a massive deal in business. So the act of being present, if we all were Zen masters and were able to step into a moment with zero attachment to anything, completely present, like there's no psychological time, there's no future, there's no past, it's just here in this moment. Yeah, amazing. Like that would be incredible. But hey, that's super hard to do. So I'm like trying to help you hack it.
it's also not, and this is what I like about the work that you do, is it's this combination of mindfulness and peak performance. Because the reality is we live in a world of ego. We live in a world of performance. We live in a world of attachment. It's like I got a couple of friends that are like, I have surrendered my attachment to anything, and I know these guys, and I'm like, you're full of shit. You're
Yeah.
so attached. You're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
lying to yourself. And I think that's too. I think when I think about your process here, about the awareness, and then stop the loop, and then the 2-step on the shift to physical, turn off the alarm, and then get into your A game. It's like if you try to skip any of those steps and just try to go into your A game, your psychology is just going to call you out and go, dude,
Absolutely.
you're full of shit. Like this is
yeah.
like and it's going to go back and just continue to replay the original loop. And so
when I first learned mindfulness, I learned it off someone who had learnt it from monks, but he was very high up in that space. He was considered a guru. He literally lived in a commune, and I followed this guy around for 4 days saying to him, well, it's okay for you. Like you live in a commune with no, bills, no electricity, like I have 4 children. They are at schools that I want to keep them at with these fees. I would like to have a house big enough and I just badgered this guy for 4, I like just would not leave him alone. And for 4 days straight, he would look at me. He would say, Emma, you can do this now or you can do it when you're sick. Emma, you can do this now or you can do this when you're sick. And it frustrated me beyond all belief. And I completely get what he was saying, like completely get it. But I think it was in that moment, it was like, I do get that, but I do also think we are in a world where we want to achieve certain things. And is there a way that I can help people do that more mindfully, but recognize that it's not necessarily the devil to want to afford, a holiday. And I sometimes feel, now here's my cynicism coming out, that the people preaching to us about this, they've been wildly attached to a goal and they've ground it out and they've done all of that and they've reached a level of wealth and status that they can drop out. And now they preach to us about being the being, not the doing, because they took 20 years of the doing to reach a place where they finally feel safe enough to sit in the being, and now they preach to us. And I'm like, well, thanks, but I have a son with quadriplegia. I'm so deep in the doing that no matter how much I want to drop out, I cannot drop out. I will have expenses, I will have responsibilities, I will have attachment, but I don't know how to not have that.
Well, and I think too, like I would just say like, well, and this is really for me, this like projecting my own, kind of situation, but I kind of like this game. Like to me, it's kind of fun. And so I like performing. I like doing things. I like being challenged. I like the wins. And truthfully, I actually like the losses sometimes because they teach me so much. And so, I think, we live in a tangible world, and it is fun to be able to enjoy some of those things. It's not my be all and end all. I have no interest in dying with $100 million in my bank account. Some guy tried selling me like some whole life insurance policy, and he calculated out if I put X amount of money away a year for the next, I'd be at 75, I'd have X amount of money to give to my kids. And I'm like, why do I want that much money to give to my kids? Like, I want to live a life with the kids, have experiences along the way, not when I'm in a box, when they get to do it. If that doesn't make any sense to me. And he actually didn't have an answer for me. So
I think it's important to take what you've said because you find it fun, and a lot of people find it a grind that's causing burnout. So how can we both be in the same game, and one person's getting completely burnt out by it, and another person's, hey, finding this fun, and I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm having some wins, I'm having some losses, and that's okay. And burnout is, yeah, anxiety is really bad, and a big part to blame for that is our phones. And as I have 4 children, so as I'm speaking, I'm speaking through the lens of them, young adults, teenagers. They have this phone that is constantly giving them information that they don't have enough, they're not good enough, should have more, are not, don't look the same as someone else. And so they're constantly in the alarm state because the information from the environment is that you're under threat. And so that is a real problem that we've discussed. But burnout is a real problem. Now, burnout used to be something we attributed to primary carers, first responders, anyone chronically exposed to stress. But today, that is every single one of us. We are chronically exposed to stress, and to use the smoke alarm that I've been talking about, if that smoke alarm went off in your house all day, every day, and you never did anything about it, eventually the batteries are going to become flat. And so what we think with burnout is that if I just have a day off, if I have a holiday, if I watch Netflix at night, if I just completely tap out and lie on the couch for the weekend. But we take that break and we sit in that break thinking, oh, I'm going to have so many emails to do when I get back to work, and I'm really guilty. I shouldn't be taking this day off. And so we are still in the stress cycle of the unhelpful thoughts driving the unhelpful feelings. Or we're sitting on our couch. We haven't moved all day. We're in a ball on the couch and watching Netflix thinking, I don't feel any better, because your physiology and your thoughts are still in that stress cycle. Just because you are not now at work, which you are believing is the cause of your burnout, that is not the cause of your burnout. The work is not the cause of your burnout. Your boss is not the cause of your burnout. Burnout is an internal construct, like expectations. It's what we think and what we feel about our work. It's what we think and what we feel about the loss of that game. It's what we think and what we feel about our work colleagues, our boss. So why can you think it's fun? Well, you can think it's fun because you're not running unhelpful thoughts around it. You're not running unhelpful feelings about it. You're running super helpful thoughts around it. Well, this is fun. Okay, I just lost there. What did I learn from it? How can I grow from this? So the only difference between you and the person experiencing burnout from it is the internal narrative and the internal feelings that you are holding around the tasks that you're doing every day. So I'm like, don't strive for more work-life balance. Like, so I need more work-life balance. I need to have more time off work so that it's more balanced. At the time you're away from work, you're on your phone running this story about, like, I hate my job and I hate my boss and what am I doing with my life? You're still out of balance. You're still in a stress cycle. So don't
Yeah,
try to get more work-life balance. Try to get more balance in every moment, balance of your thoughts and your feelings, balance of your internal environment, balance of your perspective, balance of your narrative around what you're doing. Really, ultimately, our purpose, our passion, it all depends, is an attitude. It's what we say about the situation. It's what we say about the task that we're doing.
it is. I'll chime in and just say this is that one of the things that inspires me to talk to somebody like you is because you put it into a context and a construct that is relatively simple to follow. It's got simple steps, and I want to recap it
20-year-old footballers. It's from
yeah,
talking to 20-year-old footballers.
with lots of testosterone
Yeah.
and,
It's
and
like
other
step
distractions.
one, step
You're right.
two, that's it.
Exactly. But and I'm going to recap it for the listener. But I also wanted to say, like, what my comment to the thing that you had talked about, whereas, like, I have these feelings of like this is a fun game for me, is that and I'm saying this with all humble and respect to, like, the listener. Like, if you knew me as a person, if I can do this, and I feel like I've successfully accomplished, I'm not perfect at it, but I get better and better every day. And if I can do this, anybody can do this. Um, and with, the help of, your format, I think it's an example of how people can do it, because there's been no secret sauce for me. I'm a college dropout. I got, like, and I'm not being, you know, defamatory to myself. I'm just being honest about, my situation. It's not like I come from money. I just every day try to be aware. And, one of the things that I've been most fortunate to have is great mentors along the way. And, like, as you were talking about the acceptance piece, which I didn't even know, to be honest with you, I love the piece about acceptance. It's a huge takeaway for me, because I would use, I've always subscribed to the feeling or the thought process of, you can't experience two emotions at the same time. So if I'm in the emotion of anger, if I can try to replace that emotion with gratitude, and then just, and this is how, like, simple I am. It's just like, well, I'll just, like, my mom, like, I just was work, 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 work. So it's just like, so I would just repeat, 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 repeat until, fake it till you make it. And then just eventually it clicked. And then I have this automatic response of, okay, I get angry. And then I have to now find a place of gratitude. And I have some steps that I do with that. Um, but I love this acceptance piece, and I never put the piece of the puzzle together until you were just speaking. But one of my mentors, Harold Cunningham, who he was a mentor of mine when I was 29, 30 years old. He gave me the serenity prayer, and the piece in the serenity prayer where it says, God grant me the wisdom, or sorry, the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And and I used to repeat that when I was young, because I was a striver driver and I wanted to control everything, and I thought everything was in my control and I could manipulate, shit to get what I want and all that stuff. And as you get older, you find, how ridiculous that is. But well, not even when you get older, but you just have to learn it somehow. And but like, that acceptance piece is so huge. So for the audience, and I just wanted to clarify a couple things, but the first step on the awareness piece, um, is, like, really diagnosing, how does this show up. And I had wrote, like, you know how does it show up physically? How does it show up in my actions? How does it show up emotionally? How does it show up in my story that I'm telling myself, the words or the phrases or the constant repetition? And if there's anything that you'd add to that, those were kind of the bumper stickers that I kind of had written out.
what I would add to that is the higher you get up the evolution scale, the harder it is to catch. So when I work with leaders, it is difficult because a lot of the loops, a lot of their B.A.M.E loops have served them really well and has got them to where they're at. You know, like if they, you know, they had a loop that a narrative like, if I want something done, I'll do it myself, and you know, I know how to do this, and so and then they're getting promotion after, and they've got this feeling of just like this real you know, energy in them around, I've just got to get this done, that propels them to take this mass action that other people aren't prepared to do, and then all of a sudden they find themselves at the top of the tree, and they're a leader, and they've been running this B.A.M.E loop, and now they're that same loop. Well, I'll just get it done and I'll do it, and this feeling of like, give it to me, I'll get it done, is not serving them very well. But they don't see it as an unhelpful loop. They see it as something that's really helped them and is really good. And here's what we do: we judge other people's B.A.M.Es. So we see the people pleaser, Sally, who says yes to everything I ask her to do. Well, we love having her in our team. She's great. But we don't like, you know, Martin, who is, you know, a procrastinator, because he's no good. They're both in their B game. We just need to start looking at people. How can I help them shift into a more helpful place here? Like if I've hired them, they know what they're doing. But as a leader, we need to get really, really clear around, how is my B.A.M.E showing? How does it really show up for me? You know, I went to a Joe Dispenza advanced meditation teacher training retreat.
Yep.
And
that's on my bucket list there. I
yeah,
want to do that for sure.
it was awesome. But I sat down and I'm sitting next to this girl, and a bit younger than me, and she said, "Oh, I'm really nervous. You know, I'm not much of a meditator." I'm like, "Oh, you're at an advanced teacher training retreat." But anyway, she's here, and she's like, I've left my 3 kids at home with my husband. I've never left my 3 kids before. And, you know, I travel the world for my job. You know, I leave my kids all the time. And I just in that moment assumed like, it's all good. Like I'm this mindfulness teacher. I work with Formula One drivers. I got you, girl. Like it's all good.
Right.
And so we sit down, we start this meditation, you're virtually shoulder to shoulder, and you drop into this meditation, you can sort of feel their energy. And I could feel she'd gone right in deep. And I'm like in this B.A.M.E loop, like, I'm supposed to be the experienced meditator. I'm better than her. Like, I do this stuff all the time. I teach people to do this. Why aren't I having the experience that she's having? Like,
Right.
you know, and I was really, really agitated by it. Like, I am the teacher. I should be the knower here, not her. How does she master this before me? And I really came away from that and really started to explore, where else in my life is that showing up? That I think I have to be the expert, that I think that because of what I do, that I should have some authority in this space, that I should not have a weakness in this area. And I just looked, where else is this showing up? And I was able to identify this really subtle B.A.M.E loop that I probably thought was really helpful to me, that, you know, it helps me that I teach people, and that and really that helped me now walk into any room as, rather than the knower, just the more curious and more like, who can teach me here?
The
Now
seeker.
I probably did that intellectually, because isn't that what all good leaders do? But I clearly wasn't doing that, right? Because I had this real attachment to, I should be better than this girl at this, because this is what I do and this is what I teach. So the more successful that we get, if that is how we judge ourselves, or the more evolved we get, it's still there. We just need to look a little bit
We
deeper
looked a little bit harder, right? Yeah.
under the
Yeah. No.
microscope, and really, and that how it shows up. You know, people are like, well, should I look at my work, or should I look at my friends, or what should I look at? It'll be the same. Doesn't matter. Like, how you show up at work. If you are, the expert at work, you'll be that with your friends, you'll be that with your family. So it might be slightly different, but it will have the same themes around it. So yeah, I would just add to what you were saying is to really see, and that's why that word unhelpful is so important. How is this not helping me?
Mm.
Rather than it being a negative loop, how is it not helping me? So I worked with the CEO of one of the big government owned agencies, telecommunication agencies in Australia. And it's like, he just one of the most intelligent, capable leaders. He knows the answer when someone has a problem. He knows the answer, but it's unhelpful to always have the answer for your team. It's not
Right.
always helpful, right? So that is not negative to have a good answer, but it wasn't helping him be the best leader. So it's really subtly looking at what's going to help me consistently perform at my best, consistently best execute the process in this moment. Now, for that leader, to get to be that leader, having the answer to problems, knowing it quickly, implementing it quickly, got him to where he needed to be. It was a very helpful skill. But now it's not the most helpful thing as a leader to just give your team members the answer. So, what can be helpful in some environments, in some stages of your career and where you're at, doesn't help you in a different role, because now the execution of his process is different. That's another piece we haven't talked about. Knowing intimately what is the process that is required for me? What process am I actually trying to execute here? So, a Formula One driver coming into a corner, I need to be clear on my process, hold my attention on my braking markers, feel the car, soften my grip, look ahead. That's the process. Holding my attention on that process is very difficult when my attention is wired to look for the threat. What if someone crashes into me? What if I lose time? What if, and this is what leads to us braking before our braking markers, is that my attention has gone to the narrative of like, what if I crash? What if I overdrive the car? What if I miss a corner? And so knowing the process and holding your attention on the process, on the controllable parts of the process, is the final piece into getting into your A game. What is my process? What part of the process do I need to hold my attention on? And actually landing my attention on that controllable piece.
I'm just sorry. I'm trying to make a note here on that. So what is the so is it, getting into the A game, which is I had written like the triggers to your physical, and then the other is what is the process?
Yeah. So I know you love your questions, and this question is a generic question. What do I need to do right here, right now? You can make that non-generic by knowing your process. So what do I need right here, right now to execute my running processes? Well, I need to be up on my toes. I need to have a body on my opposition. I need to have eyes on the ball. And our process, we don't consistently perform because we don't best execute our process. We don't best execute our process because we don't have our attention on our process. We don't have our attention on our process because our attention is on the threat, on the danger, on what if we lose? What if people think I'm not good enough? What if we can, on our stats, on our, what are other people doing? And so the final piece is like, I talk about our focus like it's this one of those camping head torches that you wear, those flashlights that you wear when you go camping.
Yeah.
And so we're all walking around with this one flashlight on our head, and it's wired to look for the bad. It's wired to look for the danger. It's wired to have your attention on the failure, the mistake, the car crash, the not getting the deal, the boss that's in the room. It's wired to sit on that stuff. Its job is to look at that stuff. And so when I catch that flashlight on that stuff and say, hey, I can't change it. It is there. I get it, but it's actually okay. I'm able to then pick up my flashlight, put it on my breath, calm my body. Now I pick up that flashlight and I put it on that process. So for the athlete, it's my feet, it's my braking markers, it's the ball, it's the opposition, it's my running patterns. But for the businessman, it's like hearing what someone's saying. It's, what information are they saying? It's my I'm putting my attention on how am I building rapport with this person? What's their body language telling me? I'm putting my attention on the product information, the figures. What are the figures telling me? So it's actually putting your attention, your flashlight on the process, on what you can control. It's not where our attention sits all day. Our attention sits all day on the danger, on the what if, on the fear, on the thing that could go wrong, will go wrong. And we have to go through this process to get it over onto our strengths, onto the stuff we can control. And it is my biggest bugbear with businesses right now who invest so much money on strength profiling. And we all go through this process of knowing our strengths, and we get these experts in to profile our strengths. It's like knowing your strengths is not the challenge. Catching your flashlight when it's on all the bad and the dangerous and the unhelpful stuff, and knowing how to get it off that onto my strengths is the challenge.
It's interesting because as you're saying that, I was thinking, like, and just with all my conversations with business people, you hear this frustration with leaders and business owners who are going, well, like, and so I'm going to turn this into a question, but you'll hear them say, like, I just don't understand, like, why can't they follow the process? Like, whether it's in customer service, whether it's in sales, whether it's in like execution at a restaurant or operationally or whatever. And I guess so. A couple of questions in that, in how you would kind of frame all that is, and I don't know if you'd waited or what, but in terms of the training and how important is it to understand, like, and I was kind of thinking, as I was thinking about the business people, I also thought about sport, like if you were, whether it be in the AFL or the NFL or NHL hockey or whatever sport or basketball, there's plays. They have a series of plays. Let's call them 50 plays. Every team has 50 plays. Defense has plays. Offense has plays. And understanding the playbook is one thing. How critical is that? And so that you can reflex to it. And then that piece that falls in that you were kind of talking about, which was being able to flash that flashlight on the process.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my answer to those business leaders that you have had conversations with, we are not wired to execute the process. We're not wired to execute your sales process. We're not wired to be good at our jobs. We are wired to stay alive. And if there is a threat in the environment, then my attention is going to go to that. And when my attention is on that threat, then I'm going to develop these unhelpful thoughts and feelings as a way to run away from that threat or protect myself from that threat. No matter how much your company wants to invest in your processes, your value statements, it means nothing to me when I am under threat. And so every business would benefit from equipping their people to get better regulation of this response, this stress response, to see it, to understand it. Telling them what the process is not the answer. They know the process, but that their mind is paying attention to the thing that they have to get away from, or the danger, and I'll put a footnote there because we're going to talk about functional freeze and what that is and how that's showing up. But so we're not wired to execute the process. We, in a sporting sense, can have 50 different plays. Do we need to know them automatically? Yes. Because when we're not in a threat response and when we're just present in the moment, we want to operate from muscle memory. And if we don't have any muscle memory of that play, then we're not going to execute that play. We're going to execute whatever else we want in that moment. So yes, knowing the plays is really beneficial so that we respond from muscle memory. knowing the sales process is beneficial so that when they're not in that threat response, they know the process that they have to adhere to. But getting them out of that threat response is where the magic lies. And just telling someone not to worry, telling someone to stop stressing, telling someone to get present is not doing anything, right?
Yeah.
One footnote I want to add to that, I don't know if you've read the book by Phil Jackson, Sacred Hoops.
I haven't. It's on my list, and I
that's
just
okay. That's great.
Yeah.
So effectively, Phil Jackson's approach is if I can get the likes of Michael Jordan present in the moment because of his sheer brilliance and talents, anything that he responds with is going to be better than a play that I could make up as a coach. So he put more emphasis on actually getting them present to allow them to respond from instinct. Now, that's a book. I'm sure he put so much attention on plays, and, you know, they had a lot of different plays. So you want that balance between knowing the play and allowing the athletes to still have some sort of instinct. You want the customer service person to have a process to follow, but still bring in their natural strength of building rapport with the person. Right. But ultimately, they're not going to get to any of it if they do not have the capacity to catch themselves when they're in that B.A.M.E loop, stress cycle, threat response, anxiety. They're not going to get into it. And, you know, I watch these companies spend millions of dollars on leadership consulting and time management skills and negotiating skills and this and that. But you're dealing with people in their B game. It means nothing. You can give them all the time management skills in the world, but they're not there. They're in, you know, running mode. Which brings me to functional freeze, which I think is really important for anyone listening to this podcast.